In this lesson, we're going to be showing you how you can customize your root folder that you're using for your XAMPP server.
This video is brought to you by XAMPP Academy.
So in a lot of cases, when you're developing your web applications, you might not necessarily want to go in, which is the default root folder when you install XAMPP, c/XAMPP/htdocs. So that's the default starting, and as you can see here in the line below, I've customized the document root and as well as the directory to point to that same folder that I wanted to use as my root folder. So I usually do this, and it actually doesn't affect your PHP myadmin, so you can still go into your database. It doesn't affect anything else but the root directory of where you go when you go to either 127.0.0.1 or if you go to localhost. So this is another way to access the localhost directory. So if you want to go via the IP, you can go this route as well. So within your computer, localhost is actually pointing to 127.0.1, and that's why that localhost address translates into the root folder of your XAMPP server. So first of all, make sure that your XAMPP is up and running. So once you've installed XAMPP, go ahead and click Start on the Apache machine, Start on the MySQL if you want, or we don't actually need that right now for this lesson, but go ahead and start Apache. We can see that now the ports that are being used are 80 and 443 for the SSL certificate port. So we're all ready to go. Open up your web browser, go over either to localhost, or go over to your 127.0.1. And because I do have a default folder here that I'm not on the default folder, I've got a customized folder. That's why I'm able to see my file that's actually located in a folder on my K drive, websites.js, which is different than where I've installed XAMPP. So that's what I've got set up right now, and I'm going to show you how to set that up. So within the control panel, go ahead and config. You'd have to actually stop this. So whenever you make changes to the config file of your Apache server, make sure that you stop it and then make the changes and then start it, because those changes are not going to propagate until you restart the Apache server anyway. So it's always a good idea to get in the practice of stopping it, making your changes, and starting it again. So in case you're wondering what happens if you go when it's not working, you're actually going to run into this where the site can't be loaded because of course the server right now is turned off. So let's go ahead and go over to Apache config, and remember in the earlier lesson I changed my default folder to go to Notepad, and that's why we're actually sitting on Notepad. So I'm going to make this a little bit bigger so that you can see it. So scroll down all the way down to roughly around line 200 and around just before 250. You can see that we've got all of this as config files, and all I've done over here is I've simply hashed out those folders. So I can, if I want to bring it back to the default setup of XAMPP, we can see that all I have to do is unhash those. So this little hash thing here in front of my source code is actually makes it into a comment, so it doesn't actually render anything out for that. So the config file doesn't read anything after the hash. So this is just for documentation or placeholding. So now when I go to my XAMPP, and if I start it up, and now if I go to 127.0.0.1, I get the default folder with that I would have got with the XAMPP install, and the same thing here for localhost. So it's as easy as that to make those changes and set up your customized folder. So this again is in a Windows machine, but it also is the same principle where you can set your document root to wherever all of your folders are sitting. So again, if I wanted to go back and switch back into my K drive, I can see that I've got, by default, I've got the XAMPP folders. So all I have to do is actually first, let's stop the server, go over to here, hash these out, bring these ones back into play, because this is actually the location of where my index file is, and I want to use kwebsites.js as the root folder for my server machine for my Apache to run, and this is where I have my index file sitting, so this is why I'm using these as my root directory. So now that I'm up and ready to go, I can go over to here and I can actually, almost forgot to start up that server, go back into the refresh here, and we don't have a dashboard, we just have the localhost. And now we're switched back to where we are within our file structure and our environment, and I'm all ready to create multiple files. And the way that I usually do it is that I have multiple folders with different files, and I just go into the config file of XAMPP and I change where it's located. So there's actually some other options that you can do as well. So if you want to have multiple domains running, subdomains, and so on, this is all possible as well within XAMPP. So I'm going to show you how to do that in the upcoming lessons. And in the next lesson, we're going to look more at what we can do when we run our FTP on our local machine. So this again gives us the ability to transfer folders from one file section to another, and we can do this right within our local machine, and we enable this by running FTP. Now this one really isn't a feature that I use a whole lot, but I will run through it just in case you are looking to your development environment requires that you've got an FTP connection and you want to completely simulate that effect. You can do that as well within XAMPP. So that's coming up in the next lesson.